Apologies for absence were received from Councillor Spencer Flower and Andy Todd.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to everybody at today's Audit and Governance Committee. My name is Chris Swain. I'm Dorset Council's Risk Management and Reporting Officer. So a couple of points just to go over. So following observation from one of our cooperative members, Roger Ong, at Audit and Governance Committee on the 13th of January, the risk dashboard has been updated to reflect the use of almost certain as per our likelihood scoring methodology, and this is covered in my report under Appendix A. Into the main body of the report, so section 1.2 refers to the Policy Intelligence and Performance Service, incorporating the Strategic Performance and Risk Team, now benefiting from a full portfolio personnel following commencement of Liz Crocker as Head of Strategy, who joins me today and is sat to my right. Section 1.3 around strategic risks. So effectively, well, what are strategic risks? They're going to be a focused set of risks that could be most consequential in affecting the organisation's objectives. They're going to be entering into the quarterly reporting cycle, complementing that existing suite of data provided to senior leaders. An Audit and Governance Committee will, of course, be cited on strategic risks in addition to the very high risks once they have been confirmed. Section 1.4 of the report is an update on the organisation's risk appetite statement, and this time is supported by the framework in Appendix B, which sets out the blueprint for that high-level steer on the amount of risk that the organisation is willing to take in the pursuit of its objectives. Section 1.5 is around a risk and actions register and a performance and risk hub. So effectively what we're working towards here is a one-stop shop for performance and risk at Dorset Council. We're looking to enhance that user experience, drive transparency and accountability, and ultimately demystify performance and risk and make it easier for end users. And finally, Section 1.6, I'm pleased to announce today that we've got 3 consecutive quarters with 100% risk register compliance. Thank you, and we're happy to take any questions about the report.
Thank you, Chris. So do I have questions? Simon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Simon Roach, cooperative member. Just a clarification, please, on paragraph 1.4, where you talk about the risk appetite statement. So obviously I've looked at the table that you've got, and out of that you're going to create a single statement for the whole of Dorset Council. Is that the intent? That's just a yes? Yeah. And so can you just describe at a high level what you're actually going to do with that then? You know, how that translates into a practical application within the risk management framework. Thank you.
Certainly, yes, that's a really good question. So to be with you, quite right, the matrix in Appendix B is effectively that really high-level steer that will develop that really high-level strategic statement for the organisation. And then currently we're working on a template to operationalise that through the business areas. So around things like that we will accept, we won't accept, and escalation processes, but that's still a bit of a work in progress. So we think we're there or thereabouts with that high-level matrix and ways of introducing that, but we're still working on ways of operationalising that into the wider organisation. But yeah, there is more to come.
Just one follow-up, if I may. And then, so is the intent that the current risks that you've got, so there are likelihood and impact, that in effect you're assessing to what extent the Dorset Council is willing to accept that state, and where it isn't, it's clear what state you're going to get to for those risks. Either, by mitigation, either to reduce the impact in some way or to try and reduce the likelihood in some way. But you're kind of creating a to-be state for each of those, which drives the agenda of what change is going to be. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. So the risk appetite statement is another component into enterprise risk management effectively. So we can then look towards the current risks that we've got, and we can assess whether they're within appetite or not, and assess effectively if there's any more resource and so on and so forth that needs to be put towards those. Yeah. Thanks.
Do you have any other? Okay, well, there is a recommendation and to note the report. Happy with that? Yep. Okay, so we'll move to 7, which is the internal audit activity progress report, and that will be Angie Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Angie Hooper, Principal Auditor, SWAP Internal Audit Services. Starting with the Internal Audit Progress Report of our 2 reports today, this is shortened and doesn't contain our rolling opinion because of the information that will be contained in the annual opinion report, which will be presented to the committee at the extraordinary meeting in June, not May, as it was stated in the report. We've issued 1 limited assurance opinion since our last report, capital programme adequacy and financing, and the 1-page report is included. And we have a slot on the 15th of April, which is tomorrow, at SLT with the Corporate Director for Finance and Commercial to discuss the agreed actions with SLT. Actions have been agreed and we will follow these up in our normal way. Following up on the significant corporate risks, for the response to climate emergency, both actions which were due at the end of April have not yet been completed, but good progress is being made for them. And so we've set revised implementation dates of the 30th of September for those. Actions for the effectiveness of business continuity plans are not yet due. Moving on to follow-up of actions, as at today, there are 7 overdue actions and another 28 actions with revised implementation dates. So whilst the number of overdue actions has reduced, those with revised dates has increased, demonstrating that the actions are taking longer to implement than originally estimated. I think that was all I was going to say about the report, so happy to take any questions.
Before I come to you, Simon, can I just say that about these limited opinions, I don't think we have a robust enough mechanism to follow them through to get the reports back to what's actually happened and when it's going to happen. So I did discuss with Angie and Sally the possibility of a slight change to the way in which its reports are, but at the end they give an opinion that whether or not but it should come back to this committee in a period of either 3, 6 or 9 months, because there must be some way in which they ascertain how long it's going to take for these actions to take place. And so I'm wondering whether you would be supportive of that or not in the context of these limited opinions. I'll come to you, Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I have a similar sort of thought, if you like, in terms of trying to get on top of how we're resolving actions to get back to a position of control, because there's a number of control weaknesses that are identified. But I suppose my observation overall, we've talked about actions and overdue actions a number of times. But the report that you raise, obviously you're raising actions because there's risks that you found that is unacceptable and needs to be addressed. And there's an agreement with the head of the department or the manager in charge to resolve an action to an agreed date. And that date is negotiated presumably because of the urgency of resolving the risk. And yet you know, we see a continued report of overdue actions. And actually, where there's a significant number of revised action dates, that almost suggests to me that there's some gaming of the system. Because if those revised dates were sort of 10% of the total, then I could understand that. But they're 50%. I mean, that's a very significant number. And so I'm concerned that we've got issues sitting out there for long periods of time. And although you agree a date for resolution, you know, a significant proportion of them, 50%, get revised to other dates. And I don't think it's acceptable to continue to do that. And I'd really like to understand what the root cause of that is. I don't know if you can shed any light on that, but I think that would be informative and helpful to the committee. But I do think we need to do something to get on top of it, because it feels like it's not really resolving. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand Jonathan Mayer would like to make a comment about, I guess, my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Jonathan Mayer, Director of Legal and Democratic and Monitoring Officer. So this is something that SWAP colleagues raised with me as well. And I think it's right to get those priority actions brought back to this committee to get them a better visibility. The other dimension of it that I think has not been covered is that, as well as bringing the priority actions that are outstanding back here, it's about getting the right people to the committee as well. And this might be quite part of the answer for getting outstanding actions addressed. Because at the moment, the people who are answering for other people's outstanding actions are your internal auditors, not the person who's agreed to lead on that action and has accepted a date by which that action will happen. So I think it would be helpful, as well as bringing the priority actions back here, it would help to get the right person here as well.
Well, that was the point, is trying to input some sense of urgency. I mean, just I'm not choosing it as just at random. You know, just the climate emergency. January 23 was when all of the matters were raised. We still have 2 outstanding. It seems to me that doesn't come as urgent at all. So the idea was to try and introduce some sort of timescale, which people would have to come back and respond to the report, whoever is responsible. But at the moment, it seems to me we have the meetings, we talk about it, little happens, and we look at it and it's still on there. I'm trying to get a method in this programme that will actually achieve SWAP's requirements, which they don't make them for a laugh. They're serious. And I don't think that there's enough serious response, from my opinion, here in this particular committee coming back, because they just keep coming up and up and up. So whatever mechanism we need, I think that is something that we should consider introducing, because I believe SWAP must know how long these things should take. And if it's going to take longer than 9 months, well, surely we'd need a significant response of why. But I mean, it's May 25, this was Jan 23, over 2 years. There's been nothing that I'm aware of. We've had no pandemic, we've had nothing else. It just hasn't been done. So I just feel that we should be a little bit more stiffer here. We're not having meetings for the sake of a meeting. This is a report that says something needs to be done. I'd like to see it done, please. So with your permissions, I'd like to introduce something a little bit more, a sense of urgency into these. Are we happy with that? Any other questions? No? Thank you, Angie. I'm sorry, Jill.
Sorry, Chairman, not on that topic. I've got a second question. Yeah? Okay, so councils continuously evolve and change with new administrations, different priorities and opportunities that come forward that all can drive the change. Our Future Council was a specific piece of work that started in the last administration to look at back office processes and the council front door with the public. Included also was a review of data collection and our IT processes. However, the timeline on this seems to have slipped and the remit considerably expanded. It feels as if business as usual change is now being somehow merged with the original Our Future Council remit. How will the review, audit, or whatever we want to call it, on page 39, ensure that Our Future Council, as a high priority for review, doesn't get mixed up with other change within the council? And I may ask the same question again when we come to Our Future Council later in the agenda.
As I look blankly around the chamber, I'm searching. Aidan, would you like to have a stab at that?
Thank you. Good evening. Aidan Dunn, Exec Director for Corporate Development, which includes transformation. So Councillor Haynes has highlighted on page 39, which is the forward plan of audits, and on there is a look at Our Future Council. So I think we'll look at this in a second. But in the way that the internal audit plan is worked, as looking at rolling priorities, I think we've got a conversation with the internal audit team tomorrow about what the remit of this particular piece of work, setting out the specification for the review of Our Future Council, because we're conscious that scrutiny has spent a lot of time looking at it 3 weeks ago, but also we need to be kind of developing the programme as well. So I think the role of audit, internal audit, in providing the Audit and Governance Committee with assurance about the programme is really, really important. That's why we have it as a standing item on the agenda. And the scope of the review we're going to be looking at tomorrow. My personal view is, in particular, we need to be looking at the governance, a review of the governance of how the programme is overseen, as opposed to the role of scrutiny, which is looking at the performance management of the savings coming through. So Councillor Haynes is right that the scope of Our Future Council has expanded since this time last year, but we're very clear on the scope of the Our Future Council when it came to Cabinet in January.
Thank you. We'll talk about it later on when you give a report, but in my opinion, expansion often means dilution, so we have to be extremely careful, regardless of who's looking at it. Any other questions on this? No. Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, Chairman, but it really does seem to me that there's a problem with the messaging, because it feels like when you speak to officers that all change within the council is about Our Future Council. And I don't think that that's quite the case, because although there was the paper that came to the January Cabinet, it was very specific on the areas that we were looking to change, we were looking to make savings in. But that isn't how the messaging is coming across to officers, as I have spoken to quite a few, further down the totem pole. And that's the bit that blurs the lines, and that's the bit that makes it very difficult for us as an audit committee, or even Cabinet for that matter, to chase the savings because the lines are blurred.
Right. Do you have any further comments, Aidan, on that, or should we wait until the item comes up on the agenda? I'll give you a bit of time to think about it.
Thanks. I'll make one quick comment and then perhaps come back to it later. I think, so Our Future Council Transformation Programme is not just about savings, but the point about delivering savings is going to be tracked through the budget and be reported on a quarterly basis. And indeed, the cross-party steering group will have an oversight of the programme being delivered. I think the subtlety of what's changed with transformation is previously directorates coordinated and organised their own transformation. We're trying to take a more centralised approach so we can make better use of our resources. And that may feel like all transformation is being done centrally. What we're trying to do is gather the insight and the intelligence about how it's being done more centrally. So it is different to how things were a year or so ago, but it is a significant change.
Linda, I believe you wanted to question.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Bordenline, Regis and Charmouth. I wasn't quite sure whether to ask this in the previous agenda item, but I'm still not really clear in my head about the, when looking at overall risks, whether how much agreement or how much collaboration, if you like, there is between the internal audit process in identifying the same risks. So, for example, in here, the vast majority of the ones in the unlikely, impossible in the moderate category are in the place directorate. So if I were to go on the dashboard, which I did try doing at the weekend, but it didn't work. So I've since got into it today. But would I find the same identified pieces of work looking at those risks? Or are they, to what extent does what the officer's risk reporting fit into and match what the internal auditors are doing? That's a bit that I'm finding.
Okay, I think I get you. You're saying, are they mirrored? Are the same risks being identified by the officers that are being identified by SWAP? So I'll have to ask Sally if you'd be kind enough to.
Thank you, Chair. Sally White, Assistant Director, SWAP Internal Audit Services. I will be explaining a little bit more about this in the next paper, which talks about how we plan our approach. But we do regularly meet with directorates. We talk about their risks. We try to align our work with the strategic risk register, principal risks. We look at the service risks. We look at key performance indicators to see whether they are going up or down. So we're constantly trying to sort of align our work to how the organisation is performing, really. So you might not see in that list of work something that actually says the risk that you're looking at in the risk paper, but there is probably likely to be something around those areas within, our plan of work.
Yeah, so just as we're talking about it, so perhaps we could illustrate it with a specific example to bring it alive, because it's something that I noticed on your audit plan, where you've got vulnerability management for ICT as a limited priority. And yet we have two very high risks that to do with the risk of cyber attack and loss of IT resources and the business continuity that might need to result from that. Those are the highest risks that the council is articulating in its risk management plan. And given the change that the council is about to embark upon around transformation and leveraging information technology further, also including the possible use of artificial intelligence, I think that just raises the risk even further, because you're introducing whole sets of new technology potentially and processes leveraging that technology. And that creates new possibilities for vulnerability, which provide a surface for attack for bad actors. And so I would have expected that ICT vulnerability management to be something that internal audit was looking at on a very regular basis because of the significance of risk. Yet it's articulated in the plan as limited priority. So it seems to be incongruous to me.
Yes, I think somewhere in the paper it says regarding that the council won't adopt anything that might be of a higher risk when it comes to changing its systems. I can't remember exactly where that's put, but I do remember reading it. But that doesn't seem to fit in with a risk. I don't know if you, Sally, you want to add anything?
Yeah, the sample of work that you're looking at there is indicating a timing priority more than a risk priority. We're looking at that currently because we want to have our work show more of a risk assessment. So we would actually have a risk and a timing so that you're not, at the moment, I think those two things are conflated. So it looks as though we're applying a medium priority or a medium risk to those areas that you consider to be higher priority. They're medium in terms of timing. In terms of timing, it doesn't always mean that just because something is the highest risk, we will be looking at it immediately. We have to make sure that we look at things at the right time because things may be changing, moving on. We don't want to be doing work that isn't necessarily going to add value at that particular time. Timing is quite important, is an important consideration around, you know, when we have to do that work, when would be the best time to do that.
May I just clarify, please? So I understand that the timing might not be immediate. I guess my expectation, though, would be, given the criticality of the risk, that the timing would be frequent, i.e. that every single year you would be looking at it because the risk is there. It certainly hasn't changed since we put the risk register together, as far as I can see, as a very high risk, of which there are very few. And so I guess my question is it something that you're going to look at every single year because of the criticality of it? Thank you.
It's something that we do talk to the ICT manager about. We're often told that there is other assurances out there and quite, you know, there's a lot of external inspection of that area. It is something that we do talk regularly with the ICT manager. I think Aidan wants to.
I'm going to have one final go at this, which is that if there are other assurances out there, then this should not be regarded as a very high risk, because clearly we've mitigated it in some way. But yet it's sitting on the risk register as I can't remember what the likelihood is, it's a high likelihood and a catastrophic impact. If we've really got other assurances, then that is not appropriate.
Right. I mean, we're talking about ICT. So, in my opinion, I mean, sounds similar to yours, is that this is a continual risk every single day, regardless of whether someone's looked at it last year or not, because every single establishment in this country is under cyber attack continually. So it's not something that's going away. So I would have thought from a risk register point of view, it is a continual high risk. There is absolutely nothing or very little that we can do to mitigate that risk. There's no way that anybody in this chamber can say we've mitigated the risk of ICT. I would suggest that's impossible. But what we can do is bring it back on a regular basis. Just going to what Sally said, I don't think, because it's continual, I'm not sure the mechanism that we're seeing reflects that. But it's being constantly looked at because we're not seeing the other side. If there are other assurances, we're not seeing them, are we? So it would be nice to know what they are, because they clearly mitigate the risk of something that probably can't be mitigated, if that makes rather strange sense. Belinda.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, just on the ICT, is there are there checks on where Dorset Council is providing ICT services for other organisations like town and parish councils? Are there checks on those other organisations being part of our system?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but we could find out. And I wouldn't have thought so because they are separate, unless they're interacting. But they are just as much of a risk of inputting to us as any other member of of anybody we deal with, either through procurement or through day-to-day. Any day that you get an email, it might be the one that infects your system, mightn't it? So what are we trying to achieve here? That's what I'm trying to get to. What do you want to see from SWAP that will make you feel more assured of something that you can't really be assured about?
What I would like to see is the frequent review of vulnerability management as an example here, because it's always going to be a risk. It's continually changing. We're enhancing the risk by by our future council and the new technology we're bringing it to bear. So I think, I would like to see internal audit continually look at that on a regular basis.
Okay, well, we can bring that. I mean, the bottom line here is that we have a whole ICT department who are continually fighting it and resolving it every single day. SWAP's role is to audit that to ensure that it is a responsible response to that risk. And I don't think it would matter if they went there every single day, but I take your point that it may be that it should be on a more regular basis, it would be quarterly, and we could suggest that. Would that be if we went to quarterly, because currently you're talking about annual, aren't you? Sorry.
I think it would be something that we would need to talk to the ICT manager about. However, I think the resource required for us to audit on a continuous basis might be slightly problematic, I'm not sure.
Simon?
So just to clarify my position, I wasn't trying to suggest that it was done as frequently as quarterly, but at least annually, for sure.
I mean, I thought from what you said, it was annually, but you like to look, and you do have regular meetings with the ICT manager.
Absolutely, we do. And yes, we do ICT audit, various ICT audits across the year, but not necessarily specifically on vulnerability threat.
Thank you. So ICT falls within my sort of remit as exec director. So can I just join up a couple of points we've made? So first point earlier about appetite for risk. I think having a clear appetite statement is going to help us in this conversation. Secondly, this point about triangulating the governance from different aspects. So using the example of ICT, one of our joint highest risk is failure to recover from a power outage. So we're really conscious of that, and we've been building up over recent weeks, testing the parts of the system in isolation. And shortly, shortly, we're going to be running a complete power outage over the course of a weekend here to make sure, we need to do it anyway for maintenance reasons of our equipment, but this will give us an opportunity to test, first of all, the shutdown, and then more importantly, the getting back up online. And so all the testing that we've done in isolation has been reassuring, and so the final test of bringing everything back up together is going to be the final test. And at that point, so balancing our appetite with the evidence from a test will give us a view of whether we could or downgrade the likelihood or the impact of both of those things. So it is a moving kind of picture. So I think it's important that audits stay on top of it, but also I think it's important that we, as officers, are able to give the audit committee those other triangulation points as well.
Thank you. Andrew, you've been waiting for a while patiently.
Thank you. And I'm going to return right to the start of the discussions on the matter that you put to us, which of course is how do we track and trace effectively recommendations from SWOP, and I should say an internal auditor, and the time frame for that. What I want, my understanding of things in local government is the best chance of that happening is if we are very prescriptive about that as a committee. And I want to ensure that that is put across in any wording that you wish to put in the minutes from this meeting, and to establish that it doesn't require any sort of ratification or placing on any forward plans with any other committee. I would hate for this to be lost in the passage of time, because the very point of these discussions has been the passage of time is all too often the reason why things get forgotten. So I think you were suggesting that the recommendation from this committee is that SWOP reports that need embedding in the policy need embedding should be reviewed, if they are to be reviewed, at 3 months, 6 months and 9 months from the time of presentation. Is that correct?
Close. What I was suggesting is that the SWOP themselves would give that timescale. It would either be 3, 6 or 9, not all of them. It would be one of them. That was based on their experience of how long they believe it would take to resolve that particular issue. Are we happy with that?
Roger Ong, co-opted member. Just picking up on one point that was just made regarding powering down the IT systems. Does the council not actually have a disaster recovery site that if it then fails, you actually physically go to and it's already duplicated there? Is that the case?
Yes.
Sorry. Do we have any more questions? Or are you happy that that will go forward as a recommendation to SWOP? Happy? Yeah. Sorry, Andrew. I think, Jonathan, he's staring straight at you.
Yes, so I'm not sure why Councillor Parry was staring straight at me for that one. I don't think it needs anything more from this committee, but I would go back to the point that I made, Chairman, which is that I think SWOP also intended that if we were not getting traction on an action that is ascribed to a particular officer, that we should be able to get the right person in front of your committee, the right executive director here, to explain why something has gone beyond a date that somebody has actually agreed themselves under the current arrangements. And I think that would be more helpful than having SWOP colleagues having almost to apologise for somebody else who hasn't achieved their action.
That's not the intention at all. It's not. In no way I'm asking SWOP to apologise for the failings of others. No, not at all. I just want a mechanism in place that will assure me that it's coming back here with the relevant person. That's all I want. And I think that's what we should all, we would like to see. Okay. Shall we move on? Because I think we've exhausted that particular, and hopefully that is now minuted, and that will happen. So we move to 8, which is internal audit planning 25-26, and internal audit charter and mandate. Sally, I think you've also already said some of this. So
yeah, it is. We have already sort of touched on some of this. Members, the purpose of this paper is to set out our approach to internal audit planning for 2025-26. We're not proposing any changes to the way in which we plan our audit work currently. During the 24-25 financial year, we've continued to work with management, aiming to really add value to what we do and ensuring that we're helping the organisation to achieve its objectives and be successful. As such, we need to ensure that we're collaboratively aligning our work with the Council's aims, objectives and key risks. Members of the committee and relevant officers do have access to our audit software system, Audit Board. This means that you're able to view our rolling plan at any time, along with a live view of the progress of work being undertaken and planned. On page 39 of your pack, we have provided you with a table showing a sample of the work that we plan to undertake. It's important to note that this plan is subject to change, and it covers work planned across more than one financial year. As you can see, the work is risk assessed to ensure that we do the right work at the right time, and we continually reprioritise our work in response to the organisation's risks. Finally, on page 40, I would like to draw your attention to the audit resources section and confirm that there have been no budget cuts proposed for 2025-26. With reference to the SWOP external quality assurance, members have been provided with a full copy of our EQA report from January 2025, which confirmed general conformance with the previous professional standards. We're working on actions agreed within that report, and additionally, from the 1st of April for the public sector, the previous auditing professional standards have been replaced with the Global Internal Audit Standards, plus the UK Public Sector Application Note and the CIPFA Code of Practice for the governance of internal audit in UK local government. I've included links within the papers for members to explore more about our standards if you wish to, but these three documents together provide the professional practices framework by which internal auditors in the public sector must comply. SWOP has to be reassessed through the external quality assurance process against the new auditing standards by 2030 at the latest. Moving on to our charter document, members might recall that I brought this document to the committee in October last year, but going forwards we aim to bring this to the committee for approval at the first committee meeting of each new financial year. The document sets out roles and responsibilities of ourselves as your internal auditors and yourselves as the audit committee. Since we brought the document to the committee last October, we have been provided with additional clarification on how the standards will be applied to the public sector, as I've previously described. So the changes basically are limited to that. I'm happy to take any questions on the planning paper and the charter.
Thank you. So do you have questions? Interesting on the list, for your benefit, Joel. Our future council is number 2, well, if it was in order, but it's, and ICT application portfolio management is there, right up there, and as is ICT user access management. So, but if you're all happy with that, we do have to have a vote because the charter comes to us. We have to approve the charter, so I need a proposer for the charter. Councillor Haynes and Councillor Bell, all in favour? Thank you very much. Update on the Constitution, number 9, that is Jonathan Mayer.
Thank you, Chairman. So your Constitution, the Council's Constitution, is a living document. It changes from time to time. Some of those changes are agreed expressly in meetings of the full Council. Other changes, consequential ones, just to reflect perhaps changes in how you work or changes in the law. Those are things that have been delegated to me. And I, from time to time, bring those changes here just to update you about changes that have been made to the Constitution. We've just published a new version at the end of last week, and I'll just run very briefly through those changes. We've amended Article 8 of the Constitution to reflect changes to the composition of the staffing committee when we're dealing with the appointment of the chief executive and head of paid service. We've also changed the arrangements for dealing with code of conduct complaints against councillors. That was something that was previously approved by the full council. We've changed Article 11 dealing with the local pension board. Those are very minor changes to the terms of reference of the pension board. We've updated your scheme of allowances to reflect changes in line with changes to the allowances paid to councillors. That's an inflationary change. And finally, we've changed council procedure rules, and this is one that I consulted the chairs of the planning committees about. Council Procedure Rule 9.5A, for those who want to look it up, that deals with questions, public questions at council meetings, and there was a little nuance in there about the circumstances in which we don't allow questions. And the original rule referred to planning matters. It's not, people shouldn't be prevented from bringing forward questions about planning in general, the council's performance in dealing with planning, but absolutely we shouldn't allow questions at full council about individual planning applications because those are dealt with in the planning committees and there are rights of appeal. So we've just reflected that change in our rules as well. So, Chairman, just to bring to the committees for transparency some updates that have been made to your constitution to confirm that we have a newly published version as of 11th of April.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for the update. But as an observation, I think it would have been helpful if we could have just had a paper with just the changes, just so that we could see, because we don't, I know that there are, in general, relatively just a minor, but if we had a summary just of the changes, I don't want the constitution, just the changes we could see, and if we had any questions, I think it's a bit difficult to ask anything when it's just an update. Everybody else happy with that? Just so we know what that's all, just as an observation. But thank you. Moving on, anybody questions? We don't know what he said, so. So number 10 is update on our future council work. Aidan.
Thank you, and I'll give a verbal update, and we did touch on some of this earlier. So just to recap, the 20th of March we had Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee looked at the 24-25 Our Future Council programme. So a 2-hour meeting that looked at the lessons learned from last financial year and how they might translate into giving us more confidence and assurance of delivery this year. As I mentioned earlier, the role of scrutiny is to look at the performance and the delivery and the implementation. The role of the Audit Committee is to look at general good governance around our future council and the risks associated with it, which we've touched upon. And we've also, as we've seen, the SWAP have got a role in providing some assurance around that as well. But if I could just do a quick couple of minutes update on where the programme is generally for information before we take questions. To recap, the theory or the hypothesis behind our future council is we need to stop acting as 4 separate councils. So this was the finding over last summer, that there's a sense that the 4 directorates have, there's an element of duplication in some of the work we do. Secondly, we want to improve the customer experience, so make it so when customers contact us, they get a better, faster, more responsive service. Thirdly, we want to make better use of technology, so the greater experience for our customers, and allows us to be more efficient as an organisation. And all of that, if we do that, it should make us more financially sustainable for the future. So that's what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going about it is there's one of consolidation, so bringing staff from across the organisation together, and we've got a series of working and planning going on, and we'll be looking at structures over the summer period. Secondly, we want to plan and resource our changes at a council-wide level. And this comes back to Councillor Haynes' point. So what we've done is we've set up what we call a design authority, which is a single point within the council where significant change proposals come through. So we can coordinate and organise them much better than before, and we're much more able to resource them appropriately. So there is a degree of control there, but having that single point, we believe, makes us more effective and enables us to join up our services and our systems. We're looking to reduce duplication across the organisation and thus reduce headcount. So there are savings associated with this, and staff savings in particular. We'll see those be developed over the summer. And then finally, we are looking to reduce our spend on commission services by once again having a much clearer view of our customer save and reduce duplication. So overall, the programme is broadly on track. A significant part of it is the Enterprise Resource Planning System, the ERP, which Cabinet has given us approval to go to procurement, and that procurement's underway. And there's loads of work going on across the organisation around service redesign. What does the future look like so that we can improve that experience for our customers at a lower cost? So broadly on track.
Thank you. No doubt, Jill, you'd like to come back.
No, I think it would be very helpful for Aidan just to clarify, particularly for our outside members, the fact that this isn't a whole council review, and actually what services and what bits are within the review and what bits aren't, because when we talk about it, and certainly when it comes out as sort of press release type stuff that go to a parish councils, they're assuming that we're doing a full transformation process for the whole council. And actually there are quite large chunks that aren't within the remit. So could you just do a bit more of that now, just to clarify the situation, because I don't think people really understand it.
Okay, thank you. So so in terms of staff who are going to be affected, the vast majority of frontline service delivery staff won't be affected by this, sort of in terms of their day-to-day operations. But what we are trying to do is bring together the customer services. So in particular, there are various members of or colleagues across the organisation who work in customer services, trying to bring it together in a single contact centre. Similarly, with business support, there's a degree of staff working in business support will be coming together in a business support team. And then the third area that's sort of most significant is what we're calling our strategic and enabling services. So our support services, be that communications, be that finance, be that program and project management. So those colleagues are going to be affected and a degree of centralisation. But in terms of sort of social care, adult social care workers, in terms of waste operatives, they're not likely to be affected directly. So does that help?
Thank you. Anybody else wish to comment at this stage? Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that verbal update was very helpful. Thank you, Aidan. At the last meeting, I think you also gave a verbal update, and I think we had some discussion there about you bringing a more formal presentation on governance and risk, because you made it clear that that was the scope of the Audit Committee's accountability, which I wholly agree with. But it's difficult to exercise any oversight on governance and risk where there's just a verbal update. So can you confirm when you will bring a paper which represents some level of formality, perhaps around governance and risk, so we can really understand how the governance is organised and managed and how the risk is organised and managed around this very significant programme of work? Thank you.
I'm happy to bring it to the next meeting if that's what the committee would wish for.
Well, both the company and the committee are very interested in what you're up to, so we would be very pleased to have that at the next meeting. Everybody, yes, thank you. I mean, going back to the original format, we were more about process, which I think falls perhaps more into scrutiny than it does into this particular committee. But if you could bring a paper back to show us how you've assessed the risk and how you're actually conducting it, it would be extremely helpful. Thank you. That's Steve. Do you have a question?
Steve Mercer, Blackmore Vale Ward. Aidan, I was in looked at a housing consultant's paper, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was very good. It cost £50,000. I was desperately searching for the note in the transformation plans about how much is going to be saved by not using external consultants. Do you have a protocol that any external consultant work has to go through you, or is there an SLT requirement to look at that, given that they are chunky amounts of money?
Thank you. As part of our current spend controls, we've have a regular review of consultant spend and agency staff spend, and we are trying to minimise it, but we do recognise that there are times when you need to buy in consultancy to expedite work and to buy in skills that you don't have. So the delegation is currently within individual directors, executive directors, and then within our scheme of delegation, if it's a particularly significant amount of spend relative to the threshold, then it would come to me as Section 151 officer. But we do look at this regularly through an SLT perspective as well. So most recently, there was a consultancy around adult social care, and I've been in conversation with the director about it.
Just going back to the paper you're going to bring back, I think that's going to need to be on the 16th and not the 2nd of June, because we have other things which are likely to be time-consuming on the 2nd. Okay, I don't want to be in a position where we don't have enough sufficient time, and our future council is on the work programme for the 16th. Any more questions? If not, we'll move on to the work programme. It's all in the papers. Simon, you're going to ask something?
Sorry, Chairman, I have a couple of questions on the work programme. One was around, we discussed last time, very briefly, about a data breach that occurred, and it's recorded in the minutes that that topic would be brought back to the next meeting, but we haven't had anything this meeting. Is it scheduled for a future meeting? I didn't see it on the work plan.
To you.
Chairman, apologies if I think I've missed that. I will go away and have a conversation with the data protection officer, write to members of the committee, and make sure you're cited on it. And then if there is still a live issue that needs to come back here, we can bring it back. Perhaps not to the additional meeting that we've got on the 2nd of June, because that will have some particular items. Apologies.
Should have marked that as 3 months. Anybody else have any questions? Do you want to finish, Simon? You've got another one, then I'll...
Yes, sorry, I had two questions. Sorry, yeah, so the second one was about the procurement issue that we discussed last time. And I wasn't sure if that was the investigation that's scheduled for the next meeting. Is that what that is? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I thought we'd asked last time if there was something about the commercial and property and assets, or whichever. I thought we asked for it to go on the work programme. Okay.
Microphone. Usually I'm loud enough you can hear me. But item 12 is urgent items, no urgent items. 13, exempt business, no exempt business. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for attending and thanks for questions. Thank you.